speed?
Y speed?
Yeah, start with Y.
Let's start with Y speed.
Easy answers. It's always good to start with Y. What's the answer, Trevor?
Build strength and endurance.
And
He's not wrong.
You see. Learn from Tom.
Trevor's eating clean today.
I am. Gotta be clean.
Alright, so I'm literally just gonna run you guys like we'll get to like speed stratum, like template and all that stuff. You got like we already went over that before, right? Like I think did I run you through how to coach speed and stuff? Yeah. And you guys see it on a day-to-day basis. So I'm gonna kind of give you more of like a in-depth look.
We have a projector too. If you want.
Yeah, the problem is it sucks.
Yeah, I bet.
We need like blackout curtains. Like we used to do it at night at the old gym. Disaster.
From 1996.
Yeah.
He's the original projector.
One with the sheets. All right, class.
Called overheads.
Oh, sorry. I know you guys still had those.
Okay, so the first thing is always going to be like anything we teach is going to be like Y mechanics, right? Y form. We'll get back to like Y speed in a minute here, but like do this. Look at the NFL and ask yourself a question: why are these dudes so strong but they're still getting hurt? Right, like Shaquan Barkley. Like we all know how jacked that dude is. Thank you. Okay. Shut up. You were going to say it before he did. Shaquan. What was it? Saquon.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
Edit that out. But the dude just blew out his ACL, right? Like it's not because he's not strong and like resilient, but like what happened there? Whole host of things. But I mean, arguably you could say he wasn't used to speed, and I'm not going to break down his mechanics or anything like that, but like the sprint model is kind of like going to be our starting point because we all know how to get people stronger. We obviously like look at the testing we've had the past couple of days. Like kids are doubling their chin ups, like their broad jumps are going up, their vertical jumps are going up. Those are all measures of strength and power. But that's easy to develop, right? Like they can show up here and we can have them clean up the weights for their first 3 months here, and they could probably get stronger, right? Like you just give them something they never had before. It's really easy to get them stronger. But like, why should we have a plan around like speed on like running mechanics? I mean, because like if you really like deep dive down into it, it's kind of running was made for survival, right? Like look at like the animal kingdom, like a cheetah and a gazelle. At any given moment, one has to chase the other in order to survive. Like one's either going to die and one's going to go hungry, or like one's going to get away and one's going to go hungry, or one's going to die and one's going to be well fed. It's like when your life depends on it. It's so like brain driven that anything that's neurological like that requires probably like a higher emphasis of training or like a more focused approach to it, right? Like you can't just say like, oh, I'm going to push heavy sleds and that's going to get me faster. It's like kind of, but like really not really. You can see what we're at. So like there's kind of this like continuum.
What's that whole thing? The weights chase speed.
Yeah.
Not really the other way around.
Yeah,
weights
it's
chase speed.
Weights chase speed.
So
About like half the RPR in this picture.
Oh, you're good.
So we have this kind of like, you're going to get any athlete, and they're always going to bring a few things to the table, right? Like you look at someone's overall performance, like, okay, it's like, why is this person the way they are? One's always going to be their genetics, right? Like their parents, all right? What did they get from their parents that made them naturally good at whatever there is? Then you have like training, you have the environment that they're brought up in terms of like competition, so like life, like home life, all that stuff plays a role. The equipment they use, and then you have like food, supplementation, drugs, and then like socioeconomic factors, like do they have a lot of money, do they not have a lot of money, like what of that can we control? Really only the training, the environment, and the equipment. Okay, so like with that in mind, it's like what do we go through from next? Like how much can we really improve? And like I'll blow this up so you guys can see this a little bit better. So let me zoom in. So when an athlete trains, their absolute limit of muscular output doesn't change significantly. Like, right, we're not like giving them anything they didn't have the capacity to probably do, but we did. Their usable performance can increase dramatically. So if you look at this chart right here, like this top one's before training, right? Like the usable performance, and like this blue box is like the muscular output, right? We can raise it up a little bit if we train, all right? But what happens is that if we train, our effective improvement goes way up just because training allows us to have more usable performance, right? Like you tell a kid to sprint, like a dog's chasing him, like dude, kid's gonna be fast. Like I don't care like how like fat or I don't care how untrained he is. Like when you're running for your life, you don't think about it, right? Like there's this like great phrase like burglars never tear a hamstring, right? Like cheetahs never tear a hamstring. Like when you're running for life, you can't do it, and that's why like games and stuff like that, we put them in that brain state to where they're like, oh whoa, like gotta go. Like you don't have time to think. Like when you have time to think, you have time to get hurt. That's probably why I get hurt so much because I think way too much when I sprint.
That's why, like last night, like when you were putting bet, or was it 2 nights ago when you were putting bets on people, you've never seen them run faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, that did work really well.
It was great.
Just gotta put your money up.
But I think like what
like a ton of money.
like the old school way of thinking is like more is better, more sprints over good sprints, and like mental toughness, right? Like people use running for conditioning, and it's like, well, it's like
Cornerstone.
well, it's like we're not giving them mental toughness. We're preparing them to make them mentally tough, right? So like if I make someone stronger and faster, you don't think they're going to be more mentally tough because of that? Like it's like I think of like mental toughness is like you're consistently putting in good results day in day out, rather than like seeing what you can prove to yourself here. But if we keep rolling through here, there's a lot of stuff in here, and like next time I'll dive into all this like kind of minutia a little bit more. But like, why speed? It's because it's like the ultimate form of fight or flight, and like it's very like hindbrained, which means like you have your forebrain, like your thinking brain, like stuff that processes information, and you have like your unconscious brain in the back of your head, right? Your hippocampus. I think it's the back of your head. I don't know. Maybe it's in the middle of your head. Yeah. So we said in the middle.
Back middle.
Sure. Look at that. Brain trev. But like, if you can get that to click on, that's why I always tell people, hey, like, let's not be. The more we have to tell these kids to think, the slower they're going to be, right? Because if I have to think, lift my hand here, get my foot here, get my knee there, strike the ground here, way too much going on. You're using the front of your brain rather than what you were designed to do, which is just go. All right, don't think, go. That's why we have to make subtle little tweaks with technique, and like try to use 1 to 2 words tops to try to like drive in this adaptation of where it's like, okay, like this next rep, think up, right? Up's one word. You don't have to think, I got to think up, down with my arm, like, so that, hey, just think up this rep or lift or something like that. That is going to be so much more beneficial than telling a kid where to put his foot, how to get their knee, all this other crap that makes them slower because they have to concentrate on good form, which is like, hey, maybe your form got better, but now every time they do that, they're going to be thinking that, and like it's going to take forever for them to get that out of their brain and do that like unconsciously, if you will, and not have to think about it. So when it comes to like making, we can go back to that. So when it comes to sprinting, there's like these things, like this concept of like front side mechanics and back side mechanics, right? And so like front side mechanics is like hand comes up in front, elbow comes up in front, knee comes up in front, leg comes up in front. That's all on the front side. What happens on the back side is usually a result of what happens on the front side. So like you'll see someone arm go back, like that's only because they came up so far forward. Your arms are literally, you only have arms to sprint just to balance, right? Because you're putting so much strength and power into the ground that if your arms didn't move to match that, you'd fall over. And so when like you see other coaches and stuff tell you like, hey, like throw your arm back or like push the ground behind you, well, like that's going to happen by itself. So like, you don't have to coach that, and like the more you coach that, the more time they spend on the ground, right? Because sprinting is actually, it's not horizontal, which I know I've talked to a lot of you guys just in like coaching you. It's vertical, right? Like 90% of where you put like your force and your power is going to be straight down to the ground. The other 10% is just kind of how your posture leans. And so like you don't have to worry about going forward, because if you go hard enough down to the ground, it's going to send you forward. And like people always say like, oh, like if you go back far enough, you like triple extend. Or like what triple extension is like we talked about extension earlier. That's when your foot, your knee, and your hip all hit that like extension phase. That's when your back leg is totally straight. But if you look at the fastest people in the world, they never actually get to full hip extension. So it's like, don't worry about what's happening back there because that's just a result of what's happening in the front. So that's why when we look at a sprint, we're always looking at basically what's happening in the front. Because like I said, you clean up the arms, you clean up like kind of the legs, and like the way we do that here with like drills or other stuff, like it's gonna happen. So there's really no point in worrying about it. So like this is why we do drills. Grace, can you give me like 3 minutes? Is that okay? Yeah. Thank you. So the reason we do all these drills is because it just encourages frontside mechanics, right? If I can get someone to slow it down in a non-running environment where they're not threatened, where they're not trying to race homie G next to them, where they're not trying to get beat by the girl who's faster than them, they can, that kind of hindbrain kicks in when they go to do an actual sprint, okay? And so for the younger kids, these are of utmost importance because they have no technique and they really don't have any usable strength to be very, very fast at the start. So that's why, like, I would almost say drills and like weights for younger kids are probably going to be more beneficial than actual sprints, because if you can get their technique down while developing strengths, when you go to emphasize more speed work, it's plug and play, and they're off and running. They don't got to think about things. They've been doing these drills so dang long, they really have no choice but to, hey, like arm up, knee up, toe up, like stepping down in front of you, like, and that's why you think about it. The way we learn, we do slow to fast. So we'll do like a march with a toe raise, okay? And then we'll do just like an up and down, and then we'll say, okay, now just speed up your arms a little bit and get that pattern down. And then so it goes from marches, which are slow, to skips, which are kind of intermediate, to which are high knees, which basically mimics a run. And so we're going through this continuum of developing a brain pattern so that when they go to sprint, we just did 4 sets of marches, skips, and high knees, and that's in the tank every time. All right, and like even kids who've been here 4 years, they know like, hey, we're always going to do this, and they don't care because they know they still get faster. So like that's going to be why we promote such good frontside mechanics always, is that like the drills will teach that, and then you'll see with like how we alter drills, which we'll probably go over next week on how to like alter drills outside, like what I did hands up, or we can do stuff banded, or with like little tweaks here and there. The reason why we would do something like that is instead of telling them to do something, we put them in a position just to do it themselves. So like if I have a kid who's marching down here, all right, stick your hands up. Boom, we just fixed it. That's and I didn't have to tell him to get your chest up, get your hand towards your face. Like it's just like get your hands over your head, dude. Or someone who's like either like laying too far back, like in think of like in a falling start for someone who won't roll and fall. They just come here and they step up. If you do all their drills with the band around their waist, they feel safe coming forward. And when they go to fall or when they go to accelerate, they're going to trust themselves more to rise over their run rather than just step straight up out of a falling start, which is you want a little bit more of a gradual rise on a falling start.
How about reaching?
What about reaching?
Like reaching for each step.
Oh, reaching for each step? Yeah, so that would be like exaggerated frontside mechanics, right? So when anytime we come out in front, right, I'm going to come up. Like I said, I'm going to come straight down under my center of mass, under my hips. And then I'm going to come out in front of me again, okay? So usually where you're contacting is kind of like midfoot. And like you'll see even some kids can contact here. Like Alex does this. I know I used to do this. Like, who else did this? Like Ashley did this. Like she's so fast and like we didn't really even correct anything. No, I mean Ashley Beldier. Like she did this. She comes out and it's very subtle. Like I just slow it down on the camera to even really catch it. But it was like, doosh, and then pull yourself forward rather than just coming up and down. So if you can't, that's like where something like a drill to fix that would be like a running C, right? Where we're coming up and down here, and then I just tell them to go faster out of a running C, and like they already were programmed to do that because that's the way your brain works. Your brain just recognizes patterns. So if you give someone a pattern to memorize before you have them do a skill, it's basically like it did all the work for you.
Won't you say mock drill is injury prevention as well?
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
Because like it's not a high knee, it's a running A, right? It's still a run. And like I'll go over all that in a different talk just because we don't have time for that. But like, yeah, 100%. We can get into that. That's really all we got time for right now.